And here's the thing, Monty. I'll tell you the angle people haven't thought of if they're stupid Faker fans. Is you do realize because of the lower bracket, Faker has a chance to do a fucking epic comeback now and go all the way to the finals. Like, wouldn't that be super sick if he like rematched BLG or Gen.G from the LCK and beat them and they went to the final? He has a chance to do that. Look, I don't think it's going to happen, but that's also what I love about this format. You actually really get to see it. It's not just a one-off. Like, you get multiple chances to see it. So if Faker and T1 are who you think they are, maybe they run it back. Maybe they have an inspired low bracket.
And here's the thing. I'm all for seeing Faker come back into form and dominate and, win an MSI title through the lower bracket. Like, I don't hate Faker. I'm just realistic about his current performance. If his performance changes and he's going to have this epic run and give us better games, then fuck yeah, strap me in for that one. You know what I mean? I just look at it right now and I'm just disappointed by what we're seeing. I'm just disappointed by his overall performance. I just don't think it lives up to the standard that he's played to this year. And one great Ahri game isn't going to convince me that suddenly he's back on form, especially when his champion pool got mega pinched and he has a few days to turn it around and figure this shit out. So I hope he does, obviously. I want to see the on-form Faker versus Chovy and Knight matchups. I want to watch that.
Plus, it's also why I say earlier, you've got to just like pick your moments if you're a Faker fan. So it's like Monty says, he's not going to like in games 1 to 3 of a series, just blast the laning phase, get a load of solo kills and then carry a team fight. Like that's not Faker anymore. But if he gets to like a game, Monty, where it's like a 4th game, it's getting a bit nervy, the map state is sort of uncertain, then he might pull out like one mad clutch play that's fucking super epic. Because one thing I love is this. I always say, when you're the legendary great, but you're not at your peak anymore, it's like you can't do it on demand. You can't really just like run as fast as you want all the time. Jump as so what you got to do is you got to pick your moments. But if you're really wily, you'll get a moment where you'll have a chance to like hit a shot to do a clutch play. And the difference is that aspect does scale Monty. Experience obviously can't be overcome by just being better at the game. So the one aspect Faker has is he's way more experienced than everyone he's playing. So if you put him in the right game, he can win you a game. He can do a super clutch play.
Yeah. And we've seen it, right? But I just think like this is one of those times where the level of competition at this event is so high and the quality of the best of 5s that we saw between Top Esports and Gen.G and BLG versus T1, all those teams were playing very well, by the way. And this is another thing that I hate about the fan narrative that has surrounded this event is like people are pretending that these are bad games. These are really good games.
Holy shit. Okay.
They're like, oh, this team is trash. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? All of these teams have been really good.
Dude, I even thought some of the games PSG played in the end were pretty good, like way better than I expected. They actually had some games where they were contending. Yeah,
G2 played some banger games. You know what I mean? Like we've seen some, this is obviously as time goes on, the level of the game, the level of the game goes up as players get more experience and the game is more refined. So, usually you will have with recency bias in League of Legends, recency bias is real, not just because it was the last thing you remembered, but because players are just objectively better now than they were 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago on average. But I mean, this is probably the highest level League of Legends tournament we've ever seen. Like all of the teams are performing. There hasn't been a notable big choke out of one of the like top 4 teams yet. That hasn't happened. So I think it has been, even though some individual players may be underperforming, like we can talk about Cream, but Cream also had 2 really good games versus Gen.G where he mega carried and had outstanding performances. So yeah, the average level of Cream might be lower and he may be disappointing on some of those Ahri picks, but he's overperformed on other picks.
Logically, Monty, Faker has to win the Dade Award because I've been told he's still the GOAT. He's the best player of last year on the PC, not even in League on PC. So logically, he must be the Dade Award winner now. What do you know? You lived long enough to see Faker become the Dade Award winner. Not really, because I never hyped him, but if you're idiots are doing that, then you should have to suffer the consequences. Luckily, I think nobody's going to win the Dade Award this time. I don't think anyone's joking. It was too hyped.
It's too late. Like these teams are already too far in the bracket and nobody's really choked, right? So it's too late. I do find it just so wacky that fans like, why can't we just appreciate how Faker's greatness has changed into being an in-game leader? Why do we have to still pretend that he's the best individual player? Why? Why do we have to do that? Like, I don't see fans in other sports do this. By the end of Peyton Manning's career, it was pretty evident he couldn't throw a football anymore, but he was still, his mind for the game was still winning games. He was still making the calls at the line where even if he threw a shit pass, that pass was still going to be a touchdown because he had out schemed the defense and, made the adjustments. I don't understand why we can't just say like.
Can I tell you what my anthropological read is, Monty? Because I've spent a lot of time, especially as someone who's not, let's say, neurotypical, even though I hate that fucking term. But I just think in a very literal sense, it's a good way to explain it, right? My brain obviously doesn't work the same way everyone else's brain works. What I would say from observing people is this, Monty. The reason why it's always nephews, it's always very young people. You notice this doesn't exist among experts. Have you ever noticed that, Monty? There isn't, like, we might make fun of some of the LCS or LEC analysts and like on the double lift angle of like, do you even watch LPL, bro? But I'll tell you what, they don't tend to put their foot in their mouth when it comes to like the big name players, You notice none of them are saying, I guess Faker's just better than Chovy because they know they'd get clapped by every other expert. So nobody ever does that. But all the young fans not only think that, Monty, they don't even think it like, look, I've got a bit of an edgy take. They think we're the morons for not acknowledging that Faker's the GOAT. Because here's what they do. Since they are someone who, by definition, has never accomplished anything in life, they've never been the best at anything. What they're doing is vicariously, when they watch Faker win, he's the self-insert of them. That's who they imagine they are. If I was on a team, I'd be the clutch one. I'd be the winner. You'd be, by the way, notice how this even sounds like something a little kid would say in the playground. You'd be the loser and the one who loses, but I'd be Michael Jordan and I'd hit the clutch shot and then I win and then you can't argue because I'm the best. Okay, it's like, it sounds like a little kid who can't play well with others and you're just like bossing everyone around. Because what I don't get is like I said there, it's why actually I'll give you a very interesting analogy that someone once made to me, but I think it's a banger analogy, right? You know how there's a bazillion people who are advocates for weed? They're like, no, it's good. In fact, maybe it heals you. Like they can go as far the other direction as you want, or they just think it's a harmless crime. Let people do it, decriminalize it. There's loads of people like that, Monty. It has been for decades and decades. Where's the massive party of like heroin should be allowed for everyone? It's good. It's good for you. It doesn't exist. Even people who are heroin junkies, Monty, know this ain't good for me. Like I won't off this shit. Like even Arnold, this isn't the life for me. I wish I could escape it. So all I'm going to say is that, guys, you all say it's people like me and Monty and Dom and that we're just doing it for clicks. No, other way around, dickhead. It's like TSM. I said this a million years ago. You do realize the most popular content creator ever, Monty, is me in a time machine going back and just only saying good things about TSM. My channel would be like 10 times bigger, mate. I could have done a video why Bjergsen is the Faker of the West in season 5. That'd probably have like 1 million fucking views. All the comments would be like, he is spitting facts. Well, except no one said that 10 years ago. But, like, Thorin is on point, reference game on point, or whatever. They'd be doing that all the time. Finally, someone who sees through the bullshit of Monty and all those LS and all those Korean dick suckers. But the joke is, there isn't anyone, as far as I know, who's an expert who thinks Faker is the GOAT right now. Like, as in this moment, like, they think he is historically. But if anything, I think everyone's on the same train we are, mate. Everyone just watches him and just goes, it's cool, he can still play, sort of, innit? Like, it's actually the other way around. It's insane that he's still relevant. It's in fucking 2024. It's pretty good.
It tells you all you need to know, that we're all pleasantly surprised when he's like the second best mid laner in LCK, like he was this year. And it's like, well, that's great. We love that. You know what I mean? Like we love the fact that he's capable of being the second best mid laner, because remember last summer, he literally had to go on break because he was injured and he could play 2 champions. So his bounce back has been fucking amazing, guys. But it's also that his level has been inconsistent and has dipped at this MSI. So I think it's interesting to talk about Faker, but I just wish we could celebrate his greatness in the way it deserves to be celebrated, not in some whack-ass lie way.
By the way, don't ever let any moron also tell you that GOAT is just about your career. GOAT is the idea that if we were to take that player, that's the best player to ever play. That's not even just about resume. That's a separate conversation. Like, GOAT is the idea of, like, if we took all the nameplates off and I just showed you a bunch of footage, who's the best that you've seen on the screen? The person you pick is the GOAT. As far as I'm concerned, it is. Because I always say this, if you're not using your eyes to tell you, what the fuck are you using then? That's the only thing you've got to perceive how good people are at the game. Like, remember, because the problem is it's not a 1v1 game. If this was a 1v1 game like StarCraft, we'd know the best is they'd won every tournament. In a team game, you're always weighing up, like I think the most underrated part about people like Faker, by the way, is you have to look at things like who was your coach, who was your GM. You said it earlier about Rookie. Half of Rookie's career isn't even anything Rookie did with the mouse. It's just like he signed on the dotted line and then an idiot just fucking put the wrong player in top lane or something like that, like that. Shit like that's like, How much control do you even have over that? You know, that's why actually, this is one people won't like, but it's true. Faker's also had an incredibly lucky career, mate.
Oh
Look how
yeah.
many times like they've doubled down on him. By the way, and there's even a world, in my opinion, Monty, where if his name hadn't gotten so crazy, I think actually T1 were fools to not sell him, mate. Like if it wasn't for the fact he's like the greatest like market employee ever. If you think about it, if that's true, they were being offered 20 million like 2 years ago, bro. That you should snap call that. What are you talking about? Like that's like the value you would get off that would be meant. You could run the T1 org for the next 20 years off that money. You wouldn't even, and you'd actually potentially get a better score. The joke is, you could just literally, you realize, guys, for 20 million, you could have just sold Faker for 20 million. We don't even know if their team becomes good in the LPL. You buy Chovy for like 5 million. You've now upgraded from Faker to Chovy plus 15 million to just spend on the rest of the squad. What are we talking about? Like, that's like a snap call right there. I think they only didn't because they wanted the history and the team fans would go mental, right? So if you talk about business, that actually would have been a bag of deal.
Well, it's also that
upgrade.
I think you do have to appreciate that SK Telecom as an organization has always, back to the Brood War days, cared about, they've actually been the reason why they are as famous as they are and probably the most prestigious esports organization in the world is because they maintain their star players. I mean, even after Boxer retired, they were bringing him back as like a GM and on the staff of the team and as the face of the team, right? And they have done an amazing job of maintaining continuity of players with their fans, even post-retirement. And I'm sure they're going to do that with Faker as well. The other thing that helps them a lot is that ever since Comcast came in and basically created the joint venture with SK Telecom to create the modern iteration of T1, is that you have two multi-billion-dollar companies that are running this roster, in which case the money is less important to them than it being a toy for them to enjoy, right? It is a rounding error on their balance sheets to pay Faker. And like selling, they don't have to sell Faker because they don't give a shit. It's a marketing exercise. I mean, Comcast is just there because it's fun. It's fun for their management to run this organization. And SK Telecom is there because it's a great marketing exercise for them in Korea. Excellent for them, right? There are a lot of actual, competing telecom companies. There's, LG has a wireless network. KT has a wireless network. There are other big companies that have wireless networks in Korea. And so
By the
this
way,
gets people onto SK Telecom.
I'll tell you the piece of content they haven't made, and they have absolutely dropped the ball on this in LCK. Do you know what content piece I would have made, Monty? After Faker wins this last Worlds, and he's won the record 4th Worlds, already broke his own record, guys, to win like an almost impossible number of Worlds since no rival has even 2, right? What you do is, this is the content piece you do. It's not, is Faker the best now? You have a content piece where it's talking heads, and it is Boxer and Flash and Nada and fucking Mata and all the legendary greatest Koreans in every game, and you just have them talk about what they think about Faker. It could be whatever angle. They might admire like when he was coming up as a rookie or what he's done in a team game. That would be a fucking fire concept piece. I wouldn't want to watch that. Look, they can have whatever opinion they want. Maybe they disagree. Maybe the StarCraft 1 stick League of Legends is not as good, but I'd be interested to see what they'd say. That'd be fucking really spicy.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Especially because you have so many of those old T1 players that you could easily probably wrangle back. And also, it just creates nostalgia moments for people who have followed T1 for many years. Even if you weren't around for Boxer's run in Brood War, you know about Boxer, guys, and you still want to know what he'd have to say about Faker. I guarantee you that, right? So even the Korean fans who may not have watched during that era, because that goes back to the early 2000s. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff here, but I think it's pretty clear, like with the resources that they have, T1 has made the right call. They are in a unique scenario where they don't actually care about making money, right? And that's the story that's never told, guys. That's the story that's never told about T1. Is that people are like, if anything, I'm going to put this out there. If anything, T1 relative to the amount of resources that they have has underperformed.
Oh, they have.
Which, they've won one title and one domestic title and one world championship with this roster. And it has been an absolute fumble because, especially in esports winter, they have way more money to play with. This team is run by the son of the Comcast CEO. He has all the resources in the universe. You know what I mean?
That's why I think I look at this team differently than other people, mate. Like, I actually think the Faker fans who love that this lineup got run back, it's like, you must just be a masochist, mate. Like, you're not going to win. Like, when I looked at this lineup and they said they were going to re-sign it, my first thought was like, just sign Viper. He joined tomorrow. Imagine if Viper was playing with this Faker guys. All of a sudden, none of these problems we're talking about exist. Like, Faker could just play like his fucking weird lane pick just to play around Viper, and he could just pilot that guy around the fucking server and win every team fight. Like, wouldn't that be fucking sick? But instead, they stuck with this 5-man lineup, so they have to take the strengths and the flaws of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they got lucky to win Worlds. They got lucky. You know, I don't think that this has been some sort of fucking amazing coup by Joe Marsh as a GM, because as a GM, you need to win more titles than this with the amount of resources that you have. You can't keep getting bopped by Gen G that is struggling through esports winter, right? You literally have the financial backing of Comcast and SK Telecom, and this is what you give us.
I will say, though, look, I love to hate on Joe Marsh too, but I will say he did win Worlds, so I'll give him that one. Listen, you only won 1 Worlds, though, Joe. Where's the second? You know, he did win Worlds. I'll give him that one. He did win.
But if any team should win Worlds, and Joe Marsh, you know, Joe Marsh he doesn't even come from esports. He comes from Comcast Spectacor. He comes from the Philadelphia Flyers, guys. He comes from a fucking hockey team that's owned by Comcast, and was put in this position. And like, he did win Worlds eventually, Thorin, but what would the story be if JDG won Worlds last year? I mean, like, I'm just saying, relative to the amount of resources they have that have been poured in by an American multi-billion-dollar company and a Korean multi-billion-dollar company, their results are unimpressive. This team should be hands down the best team in the world, period. They have more resources than the Chinese teams. Like, JDG's roster was in the $16 million roster last year, and I'm sure they outspent T1, but T1 could spend more if they wanted to. And they have so many advantages. They have the fan base advantage. They have the Faker advantage. You know, they have the money advantage. It is underwhelming relative to the amount of spend, especially considering they keep getting clapped by Gen G domestically when Gen G probably has a budget that's like 25% of theirs.
That's why I say the part people haven't done. One thing I always do, you know, with the storylines, I just project them forwards and backwards and look at all angles of it. So, like, when I look at this tournament right now, as of right now, T1 isn't going back to the final and winning this tournament. Like, they're going to lose third or fourth, probably. That's where they're going to be finished in the tournament. And so there's a world where you did have the reigning world champions, but they've lost this MSI. They lost last year's MSI. They won Worlds. They lost Worlds before that. They lost MSI before. Like, eventually it's going to start to look bad. Like, think how many times every single time. This is the other thing about T1 as well. Everyone has to acknowledge Monty. Because they have a clutch factor, you never ever hear anyone when they go international go, they're probably like the 5th best team. They always get that free third status. Have you noticed that? Whoever's number 1, like, it could be like JDG from LPL, Gen G with Chovy winning, but everyone always puts T1 third. Have you noticed that? They always get to be third most likely to win the tournament, and they've done it once out of like 5 times now or something. So, like, I agree, you've got to have more than that. Like, if you're as good as people think you are, you'd show it. Because right now, it looks, quite frankly, this is why I was never worried. Like, thanks. You know what? I actually have to say thank you to Joe Marsh for re-signing that roster. Because if you hadn't, everyone would just blame whoever they'd signed now. If they hadn't won Monty, they'd go, oh, shit, if you'd have kept Guma, he would have won. So now, because you ran it back, you're going to see that the fluke was the Worlds run. That was it. That was the outlier. The rest is normal reality. This is what this team's like. Like, they can be sketchy, for sure.
Yeah, and historically, they haven't, as you point out, they haven't had any clutch factor, right? Even in, even when you think that they've overcome it, like at the end of last World, then we get to the LCK finals where Zeus just gets Omega clapped in lane by Keen and basically solo loses the game, where Faker's like riding the fucking Rift Herald in and getting killed. Like, it was a pretty shameful end to that series. I mean, it was maybe the greatest LCK finals of all time. So we're not going to go too hard here. I think T1 played well, and they certainly played above what we would have thought, right? We thought that was going to be a much more one-sided affair for Gen G. So T1 did do better legitimately as an underdog, but that clutch factor hasn't been there.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.